Coming up, we look at some of the worst GM styles that you could possibly have, but fear not, if you are one of these GMs, you can change. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy, and today we're looking at negative GM styles, or GM styles that I feel are more destructive than they are useful. Now, it's important for all of us, even if you don't think that you have these GM styles, to be aware of them, because you might find that one of these GM styles kind of creeps into your game, whether you are aware of it or not. So by being aware of what these are, you could potentially identify them and understand why your game started to fail, or started to feel like a burden, or started to feel like something that you just don't want to do anymore, or that you suddenly start having players making excuses, like the fact that they have to go to their grandmother's bachelor party on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and every other day that you potentially could propose to play D&D on. Or whatever role-playing system you're going to be playing, for that matter. Before we get into it, have a look at this. World Anvil has been my go-to source and repository for all of the games that I run, whether it's for Rebelborn, whether it is for any of the other worlds that you can see here that I have created. I absolutely adore using World Anvil. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of functions within World Anvil, and each one of them is absolutely really cool. They have just launched a new one, however, which is going to make things so much sweeter for those of us who like to link everything together. It's what we like to do, and World Anvil has just made it that much easier. Check this out.
Okay, I need to tell you about World Anvil's latest feature, the Autolinker. In just one click of a button, you can link thousands of articles together. So, gone are the days of trawling through your text to find every little frickin' keyword. Just click the button on the top of the text editor and let us do the heavy lifting. The feature is available to master wordsmiths and up, and available with the Euclid text editor. So go check it out and let us know how we did. Grab your hammer and go world build.
Absolutely love World Anvil, without a doubt, and that auto-linking, I have to say, makes it so much easier. You have a living document, so much better than textbooks. I must admit, when I write my books, I often sit back and go, I love the paper. I really love the physical paper of a book. But hyperlinking and being able to jump between stuff is really cool. Okay, so bad GM styles. Let's start with the one who thinks that they're actually a good GM style. The winner. The winner is a GM who feels that they need to defeat the PCs. They adopt a GM versus PC approach, which I must say a lot of us may have had in our early years as GMs. I know I certainly had it. I felt after a while that my player characters just always beat up everything that I threw at them. So I needed to throw stronger, tougher, meaner, harder things at them, because it started to become me trying to defeat them. I started to devise scenarios that they couldn't possibly overcome and that they would ultimately end up dying in. It was an empty victory, of course, because as the GM you have absolute power and can create and control everything to the nth degree. So it really is just a waste of everyone's time. The other challenge that winner GMs have is that they are not afraid to use meta-knowledge. They will sit there and listen to what their players are plotting and then simply somehow allow their enemies, their villains, their nemesis, to just have that knowledge as well, so that they can overcome the player character's plans. A massive example, if you are ever wondering whether you are a winner type GM or not, is if your players refuse to tell you what they're plotting. If they refuse to have conversations in front of you at your gaming table or on Zoom or however it is that you play these days, if they all go, GM, can you take your headphones off? Or we're going to go into another room and GM, you have to stay here. That means your players do not trust you. They don't trust you to not use the knowledge that you gain, the meta-knowledge of what they're planning, against them. That's absolutely awful. It implies that it very much is them versus you. We don't want that. We want our game to be a cooperative storytelling experience that is set within a rules framework. Now, if it's suddenly them versus you, all of that's gone straight out the window. So you are literally now turning your players into enemies. That's what the PCs are. They're literally targets for you to shoot at as the GM. Whether you're shooting a dragon at them or an anvil or a starship or a whatever, your players have now, or your player characters have become targets, and your players are now adversaries rather than friends sitting around the table having a collective experience. How can that be healthy? How can it be healthy in any shape or form? However, we can draw strength from the winner GM. You as the GM should not be trying to win, but your NPCs should be. So if your NPCs are trying their very best to survive and being as devious as they can within their framework, within their space of operations, then you are actually using the winner GM mentality to the correct effect. NPCs should never be lackadaisical about their own survival. They should always fight to survive. They should be trying to do the very best they can. Now, if mechanically their intelligence or their mental aptitude, whatever your system is, if that is low, then they will make mistakes. They will still try their very best, but their very best is just subpar because that is mechanically what they are. Divorcing yourself from metagaming in terms of knowing what the players are planning on doing and compensating for that is absolutely important and is a skill that you should learn. The player GM. Now, the player GM is a GM who really just wants to play. They don't want to GM. They want to be part of the action. There's nothing wrong with that at all, because ultimately you are part of the action. It's just that you as the GM, you're not experiencing your world as a player. You're experiencing it as an NPC, which should really be enough for you. The NPCs should be running around, going about their goals, running their own existences, doing their own things, and that's where you should derive your role-playing enjoyment from. The player GM will create a GMPC or a DMPC, which is a GM-controlled player character. It's kind of anathema because the GM is already playing all of the other characters. So are they all GMPCs? No, they get this weird title of NPC. What's the difference? Oh, well, the GM takes special care of a GMPC. Well, the GM should be taking special care of every NPC because every NPC should be taking care of themselves to their best effect. See what we spoke about with the winner. So for me, it's a bit of an odd one. But the reason why GMs create their GMPC is so that they can be part of the group. They can participate and make decisions, which is kind of weird because they're making decisions based on information that their player has, which is you, who's the DM, who knows everything about the universe anyway. So it creates this weird kind of space where this character, this GMPC, has more knowledge than the PCs, the real PCs, ever could, because they're kind of in bed with the great being that's running this entire universe. What happens in those kind of situations is often the GMPC becomes very much a hero because they literally know everything that's going to happen and can anticipate and make decisions based on information that the other characters don't have. We don't want that. We don't want to be in that kind of space. Now, there are times, and this is important, where if you have a smaller party or if some member of the group can't make it to that gaming session, where you might need to introduce a slightly more heroic NPC, a character who steps in and fills the gap in terms of the party dynamics, or who is a more important NPC, so a mentor or a love interest or a supporter or something along those lines. So you can have more important NPCs, but they're not GMPCs. There's no need for them to be completely individual and have their own character sheets and their own statistics and all of that kind of stuff. They need to have their own stats in terms of you using them mechanically, but they should never overshadow the player characters. They should never be more useful, more valuable than the player characters. They are very much NPCs, and they should stay that way. So generally speaking, what happens is if you have a GM PC who is running around being the hero, the PCs become sidekicks. They literally just become there to support the GM PC. It should always be the other way around. The NPCs, or the GM PCs, whatever you want to call them, should be supporting the player characters. That's kind of the contract that we get into when we sign up to being a GM. The not a GM. Oh my goodness. This is the one that terrifies me the most. And I had a friend who used to claim that he was not a GM. He did it because, well, someone had to GM and he kind of volunteered. Not a GM, they don't want to plan anything, they don't want to spend too much time investing in anything because they don't want to be the GM. They don't want to. They're not modular, they're not rules, they're not narrative, they're not authors, they're just there because someone has to do it, and as a result, their stories generally will just be the most amusing for them, the most ridiculous, or the least planned out. They won't have long-term plans because they really don't want to be there anyway, and their investment in their NPCs is going to be shallow at best. I don't care about this village. Whether you come back to it or not next week, don't care, because I'm not a GM and I'm not invested and I don't, it's not my thing, right? It's just, whatever. So as a result, the game lacks direction, lacks cohesion, oftentimes can just feel like everyone's there just to have a laugh, so there's no kind of real drive to play it longer. And then these GMs sit back and go, you see, that's why I'm not a GM, because of this, because of that. And you're like, as a matter of fact, it's because you created that situation yourself. You have created and turned your PCs, they're literally just playthings. And you go, oh, I want to do an adventure where the players are inside a giant ball and it's rolling down a hill because it'll be fun, and they've got to fail, they've got to make these kind of acrobatics checks or things, otherwise they're going to fall over. And, you know, oftentimes, this is what happens, especially if you watch in feature films, second and third and fourth version of the film. So, you know, they generally speaking, unless they're very good, get more ludicrous as they get bigger and more dramatic and more gigantic, and just the characters have lost value because now it's just about one crazy scenario after the next. We don't want that. But we do sometimes want that fun, that spontaneity, that irreverence, going, you know what, we're just going to have some fun. And yes, you're trapped inside a giant ball of rock because of the spell. It is part of a bigger narrative. We're going to have a little bit of fun with that. So we do sometimes want that spontaneity, that enjoyment the GM brings in having fun with these kind of scenarios. So that is a positive that we want to try and draw out from that. Finally, we have the actor, the GM who really, really wanted to be an actor but didn't, or, as I have had in some cases, are actual actors, and they're just using the game to basically act as another stage for them to perform on. So they might have very complex NPCs, but that is so that they can get into the heart of the character, and they can embody this twisted soul who will be seeking some kind of redemption, whilst the player characters are around acting as, well, supporting cast, because the GM, who is an actor, wants to be center stage. They want their NPCs to bring a tear to the eye of their fellow players when they die so dramatically. In other words, the actor GM is just there because they can do amazing voices, they can do amazing performances, they can run these stories which are always centered around their characters and not so much around the PCs. And as I said, the PCs are literally just supporting cast who have minimal dialogue. It also means that if the supporting cast try to be dramatic and heroic and start to steal the limelight, the actor GM will pull it away from them so that they can have the limelight back on their characters. We don't want that. We really don't necessarily want that. On the other hand, something that the actor GM will do, and will do very well, is that they will subsume themselves, they will devolve down, they will become the character, they will become the NPC, and they will fight for that NPC's goals and for their ambitions and for them to live. Yeah, all of that stuff. They'll fight for all of that. And we want to be able to do that as GMs, to say, I absolutely want to embody each of my NPCs so that my NPCs are as real as possible. Whether you are a simulationist GM or whether you are a narrative GM, you want your NPCs to come alive. So you do want to draw from the actor GM that fervor, that desire to try and embody their characters. Now, I'm not saying for a moment that you need to be an actor, that you need to do accents and that sort of thing. Absolutely not. There are many games that I have played in with many GMs who don't do accents, who don't do anything along those lines. They use descriptions, they use very powerful created wordplay, or they use imagery that they have already obtained to convey the character. But what we are saying is that you need to be able to take that passion and transfer it into the NPCs. So the NPCs aren't just lifeless things that are there for the amusement of others, which is what the not a GM does. They don't care about their NPCs. Their NPCs are there just to be blown up, to be shot across the sky, and just to be used as necessary. Those are my thoughts on negative GM styles and on the positives that we can pull out of those styles. I have slipped into the actor style quite a few times. I admit it. I enjoy it when my players sit back and go, wow, that was really cool. I could totally see that scene. Or I'm going, yes, love me. You really do love me, or I will kill your character. We don't want that, right? I have been there. I have been the not a GM. I remember when I first started GMing, I was like, well, I'm not going to do it because no one else can do it. All of these things, you can go, okay, actually, you know what? I'm actually this GM. I'm actually a winner GM. You can step away from that and start to try and get to becoming a great GM by recognizing that these are the types of GMs that you are and going, haha, I need to move away. I need to adjust. I need to accept this and then move on. And it's not accepting it as a negative. It's accepting it as a state of mind, as a framework from which you need to move forward. Remember, we are busy building you as the GM. We are trying to make your gaming experience that much better, that much more satisfying. And if part of that is for you to sit back and reflect and go, well, actually, this is my attribute and that's my attribute, I need to adjust this, and then to consciously work on that, that's the journey that we're on. We are consciously taking all of this information in, and we are choosing what information to accept without just dismissing it offhand and just going, we are trying to improve ourselves. That's the journey we're on. So a massive thank you for watching all the way through to the end. A reminder, hit that like button or that subscribe button or the bell button to be alerted when new videos come out. And until next week, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.